welcome back, guys. Another edition of the Athletes Hub, weekly football roundup as always. Premier League is almost back. It's almost back this weekend. But before we do that, just to discuss the Premier League, it's time to get into the international football. So, as always, joining me to discuss all of that is Mr. Flexx.
Yes, how are we doing, guys?
Yeah, all good, Flexx. How are you getting on?
Yeah, not too bad, my man. Not too bad. Like you said, getting back to the Premier League stuff. And, to be fair, the international break hasn't been so bad. And I would thank, the African qualifications for the World Cup for that, So it's actually been interesting keeping up with what's going on over there.
Yeah, 100%. I think, we've got to start off with Ghana. The Ghana Black Stars have qualified for another World Cup next year. A 1-0 win over Comoros, to seal the deal there, qualifying top of their group as well. I don't know. I mean, I think the qualification round for Ghana was at times looking a bit tricky. But I think overall, when you look at how they qualified and the points they accumulated, it seems like it was almost a comfortable qualification sort of campaign for them.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much. I mean, if we're out here, we look at the table and we look at the group they're in, finishing with 15 points, is pretty strong, So, I mean, to be fair, we should have finished with maximum points considering all the teams that are in the group. But, they've done a good job. The main thing is to secure qualifications to the World Cup, having missed out on the African Cup, right? So, it's very important that we, made a statement and, qualified for the World Cup. So, yeah, we have plenty to cheer about. We didn't do too bad, on the last showing. So hopefully this time around we can push it a little further forward. But I have a question for you in regards to, let's say, the national squad of Ghana. It's been a very big subject of conversation in regards to the likes of Nketiah and Callum Hudson-Odoi in regards to adding players that have previously maybe been invited into the national team and have rejected it for one reason or the other. But now we are heading into World Cup. Well, we've qualified for World Cup. There's lots of talk in regards to them being allowed, to join the team. What's your views on that?
Well, yeah, it's a tricky one. It's funny because we do. I remember when Danny Welbeck first came into the England team in 2011. He actually faced Ghana and he came on and he got booed because he chose England over Ghana. And since that moment, there's always been a debate about, if your parents are Ghanaian, should you choose to play for England or should you choose to play for Ghana or another nation? It's, I don't know, it's strange because it comes across like these players might have initially chosen England, but because they're not getting any playing time, they're coming to Ghana because I know they're going to get playing time. If that makes sense. So people being a bit skeptical as to whether they should be allowed to join the national team again, it's understandable because players initially have a choice and they chose to play for England, which is not surprising because they play for English clubs and they've grown up in the system. I feel like if they do want to rejoin the national team, I would say that's a good thing. I think Ghana going to the World Cup next year, we need players like Nketiah and Hudson-Odoi. They've got the Premier League experience. They're good players as well, and they'll add a lot to the current squad and the current group of players. So I don't think it's a bad thing. I would actually welcome that, to be honest with you. But it also shows you as well that players who are debating nationalities in terms of who they represent, it's an eye-opener because when you choose to play for one of the major nations like England or like a Holland or France, for instance, there's going to be a lot of competition there. And you, as much as you're a great player, these nations have a lot of players to choose from, and there's players in there who are mainstays who won't lose their place. You know what I mean? So it's something that you've got to consider. But if they want to come play for Ghana, I think that's good news for the Black Stars, to be honest with you. I think they'll be welcome on there. I think they'll add a lot to the team. They've got great attributes. Nketiah's a goal scorer. He's great in the box. Hudson-Odoi is obviously a flying winger, did really well at Forest as well. So I think it's a good thing, to be honest with you. What's your views on it?
I mean, look, for me, I agree. I think, they have that pedigree which will lift the standard, in the squad. But, I've been caught up in Instagram conversations with people where they say, if you didn't sweat to get the team to qualify to the World Cup, then why should we now bring you into the squad for the World Cup? How about after the World Cup, let's see if you're still interested, and then you go and play the qualifications and whatnot in countries that, like Chad and going to Gabon and places like that, and Niger and places of those type. Go and play over there where it's hard, to
Yeah.
go out there and perform, and
Yeah.
then come into the squad. Whereas me, I have the same mindset you have, whereas it's like, well, look, there are players that will get you through the qualification, and then there's players that will take you far in the competition itself. So if these boys come in and they're going to add to the quality that's there, I'm not saying that they should be starters on the first 11 straight away, or whatever the case is. But between now and the World Cup, there's friendlies that we played. I would say invite them into the squad. Let's see what they're like as personalities in the group. Do they fit the group? And then let's see, do they actually make a difference to the 11 that's there? Because you can't tell me that Eddie is not a better striker than Ayew. He's miles ahead of him. Miles. And
Yeah.
Eddie doesn't even get much game at the 2 years he spent at Palace, but he's still miles ahead of Andre Ayew,
Yeah.
And then you
Yeah.
can't tell me that Hudson-Odoi wouldn't make such a massive difference, whether he's coming off the bench or whether he's starting or whatever the case is, because he is a very solid option on either wing, whichever way we put him. And for me, I look at it and I think there is a world where Ghana's front line actually looks like Hudson-Odoi, Eddie up top, and Semenyo on the left or on the right, whichever way you want to put it, and Kudus in the 10. Now that leaves Ayew to the wayside, which for me, I think is totally fine, because he's not even that good anyway. Like, to be totally up.
You're right. I agree with what your point you're saying there, but also the point you mentioned about people on Instagram saying, okay, well, if you've not helped us to qualify for the World Cup, you've not been through that journey, then why should you automatically be given sort of a pass to join the team when it's the major tournament? Which I understand that, because even though you mentioned Ayew, the Jordan Ayew, I agree. I don't think he's particularly great. I've not really been impressed with him for a number of years. I don't think he scores enough goals for a striker, but he's also always turned up for Ghana when it matters in the qualifying stage. Whether we've played badly or played well, he's always been involved in that as well, and he does deserve his place there, because whether we like or not, like I said before, I'd happily welcome Nketiah and Hudson-Odoi into the fold. But let's not also disregard players like Ayew who've been there, who've got tournament experience. May not be the best of options, to be honest. Maybe you could argue and say maybe he's outstayed his welcome in the national team. But when it matters throughout the qualifying rounds, like you mentioned, going to these places like Niger and all these places that players don't really want to go and play in the middle of a season, right? But they do it, they turn up and they get Ghana through it. And they deserve credit for that as well.
Yeah.
But at the same time, nobody's going to argue and say that if Ghana has a chance to play in a major tournament like the World Cup, that we're not going to happily invite players like Nketiah and Hudson-Odoi and others to enhance Ghana's chances of winning games and progressing through the tournament. We're not going to sit here and deny them, do you know what I mean? The option to do that. So yes, I get where they're coming from, but if we're honest, the aim is for Ghana to go and win and be successful. And if these players can come in and add something, then why not?
Yeah, I agree. And that's my mindset, is if they can add something, and we've got between now and the World Cup to see if they can add something. Maybe there should be terms that if we do invite you into the fold, you can't just duck and leave, when it's not, that, like we all know Prince Boateng did the same thing. He came along when it was World Cup and whatnot, invited into the fold, and guess what? He made a difference.
Yeah.
In an already stacked midfield, but he made a difference. So I'm not against it, and I'm not like, if they don't, fair enough, doesn't bother me too
Yeah, I
much.
know what you mean. But listen, I don't. It's weird because I don't know. Ghana, I guess people when they're debating these things, it comes across like Ghana's like a second choice for these players. But also we have to remember as well that players are selfish and they're looking at a perspective of, I'm going to play in the World Cup, whether it's for England, whether it's for Ghana, whether it's I'm going to play in a major tournament, a World Cup. So if they feel like they've got a chance to get into the squad and make an appearance at a major tournament, they will have that for the rest of their career. That I played in the World Cup, whether we did well or not. I represented Ghana in the World Cup. So players are selfish in that way as well. But for the fans, it looks like, well, hang on a minute, you're kind of picking and choosing when you want to represent our country, because you couldn't get into the England team. So now we're seen as, we're okay for you now, we're good enough for you now. And fans will be frustrated.
Let's be honest, that is always going to be the case. Like you're always going to go with what you would consider your home nation first you know, because that's where you're born, that's where you grew up. You went through their footballing system. You know, you didn't go through the Ghana one, you went through the English one or the Dutch one or the German one or whatever. And it just happens to be that, you know, when it actually matters, you know, like Eddie, he's been banging in goals ever since he's been part of the England setup. But when it matters at senior level, there's someone called Harry Kane ahead of you, you know, and then there's Ollie Watkins who's playing for Villa regularly and scoring goals, you know, so you're just down in that pecking order, which then means, you know what, maybe I should have zigged instead of zagged. You get what I mean? And it's not a bad thing to say, oh, we're second. I mean, look, compared to England, Ghana in football terms is a second-class nation. Let's just be honest.
Yeah,
you know,
100%.
I might get flack for saying this, but in every way,
in Africa, Ghana is a major contender to win honours in Africa. But when it comes to global stage, you're right. England is considered a major nation, right? And Ghana is not in that conversation. That's a fact.
Precisely. So it's not like, you know, you the other players, like for example, Pepe, or if we was to bring Diego Costa, who has an option of, oh, let me play for Spain or play for Brazil, or Deco, Portugal or Brazil. Two major nations. It's totally different. You see what I mean? Like, you know, if you're getting the option, you know, like you got Saka and Noni Madueke and others who can choose between England and Nigeria, you know, if you're good enough, if you really are good enough, you'll be playing for England like they do. And they get games, you know, and you've also got to consider the fact that playing for these African nations, things like, you know, getting in an airplane that has no air condition can happen to you. Ending up landing in some obscure country because the nation you're going to play football in has denied your plane entry. Then you've also got to consider the fact that whatever rewards that you were promised that you was going to get doesn't come to you. I've heard stories where even JJ Okocha was saying that during the Olympics in the 90s, that the Nigerian FA didn't pay for the coach that they were going to use to shuttle between the hotel and the stadium. So the players had to pay out of their own pocket to get a coach. And then they were eating the same food every day at the hotel. They went and asked, oh, why is it that our menu hasn't changed? They said, because your football association hasn't paid the bill. So we can't starve you guys, but we can't also then provide you guys with options. So then they've had to then pay for that out of their own pocket. Who wants that stress when you're at a tournament?
No, and this is the reason why. Jamie Carragher made a comment, was it last year, about Mo Salah and African Cup, and he mentioned how it's not seen as a major competition compared to like the World Cup and Euros. And it's because of situations like this. Like in 2025, even in the 2014 World Cup, the Ghana national team had issues with payment, right? So players like Suleiman Tari, Kevin Prince-Boateng, they're quite vocal, you know, about the situation they were going through, and to the point where they actually confronted the officials, and it led to a lot of back and forth, and actually got sent home from the tournament, if you remember. At the time. So it's like we're still going through these. Africa, or the nations are still going through these problems, and we talk about Africa Cup. Why is it not respected enough? Why is it not looked at as a major competition? It's because the people who run the football, whether it's at the specific nations or as a whole, they're not treating the players, the staff, and the tournament like it really matters. Things like, as you mentioned, JJ Okocha situation, the food and the hospitality, these things shouldn't be something that we should still be having issues with in 2025. Do you get what I'm trying to say? So it's until we get this stuff together, we'll always be second rate, like you mentioned. It won't change whether people like it or not, until we can sort our football out and make it attractive for people. I want people to make people want to play for Ghana and play for Nigeria and Ivory Coast, etc., etc. We'll always have this battle where we're looked at as second rate or second option because we're not even taking our own football seriously. So, you know, that's a situation there. But I mean, when you look at the World Cup, I mean, I always feel like African teams can cause problems. We've seen that in 2010 where Ghana were a kick away from the semi-final. Like, do you think African teams can do well next year at the World Cup?
Yeah, look, man, they have every chance. You know, we're talking about, we've got big players. You know, we've got big players. Whether it's in Egypt, whether it's with Morocco, you know, like whether it's with Nigeria, whether it's with Ghana, we have big players. You know, I just feel like when we get to the tournament, we start to conform to the European way of playing, Whereas I think we should just keep playing the way that we play in Africa, you know, which is
Listen,
what
if you play the way you play in Africa, yeah, they'll be taking shots from 60 yards off target.
Yeah, but you know what it is? It's different and it's baffling. Like, it's like when a boxer faces someone who's unorthodox, you just don't quite know what is coming at you. But when you conform to the way of actually playing, then they will just tear you apart, because all of those boys have been playing that way for the longest time. But if we go and play that, you know, route one football, pace, power, strong, you know what I mean? They're not about that life. They are really not about that life. And I think that can cause major upsets, you know. But I think there will be a team this time round that makes it at least to the quarters. I think so. I feel like the weather and everything in America is going to play into our hands, because we're used to that high humidity, you know. So I think certain conditions will work best for us going into that competition.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I think Ghana and other teams who have qualified, you know, Cape Verde, you know, going to make their first appearance at World Cup. So shout out to them. Likes of Ivory Coast have qualified. Senegal have qualified as well. I believe Algeria, Egypt have also qualified. Morocco as well. So already there's a strong crop of African teams there that I agree with you can really cause a problem if they get their act together. Because, you know, as you said, managers and players now are kind of set up to deal with teams a certain way. But if you look at the tools that these African teams have and the players they've got, you know, they can really cause problems, and managers and players won't necessarily know how to deal with those type of issues, you know. So it'll be interesting to see how they get on there. But listen, it's been nice to sort of talk about African football today. I mean, the Premier League is back this weekend. Speaking about African players, I did a video on this a while ago. When you look at African players in the Premier League, who are like your personal favourites?
Man, my personal favourites, you know what? I would say the ones that played for Chelsea, to be totally honest with you, because, you know, we had a very strong contingent of African players playing at Chelsea. So, you know, the likes of Callum, Drogba, Essien, you know what I mean? You know, these boys, Obi Mikel, you know, all of these boys, you know, were proud Africans, you know, and a lot of them there, you know, captains of the national team as well, big leaders. But you know, you've got Salah, Mahrez, what a player he was, you know, like a joy to watch. Yaya Toure, Kolo Toure. Like, honestly, I just enjoy watching the African boys do well. So I can't say per se, this is my absolute favorite. If we're talking, you know, world football, then I might lean to Eto'o because of just how good he was and how long he done it at the highest level, at the biggest clubs, you know, in the biggest games, you know, these type of thing, you know. But yeah, I just love African football, African footballers.
Eto'o was at Chelsea, wasn't he, for like a
Eto'o was at Chelsea for a season. Yeah. Came through and he did the business as well, you know.
Yeah, great player. Yeah, I agree with you. I feel like the league's been blessed, particularly in recent years, with the likes of Mahrez, Salah, Mane as well, who've come into the league and really lit up the league and been really successful. But I think going back to like the mid 2000s, I've always had good players like, you know, Yakubu as well at Everton was a really good player.
Yes, Benjani,
Adebayor, who's at Arsenal as well. The league's always had like decent African players, but I've always liked Yaya Toure. I always feel like Yaya was a bit different to other midfielders. You know, he wasn't maybe the most technical player. However, he had power. He was explosive, right? And it's almost like if he decided to sort of take the game by the scruff of the neck and do something, he could do it because he just had that power. He had that ability to just pick up the ball from his own half and just run and score. Yeah, just drive and score. So Yaya was one of my favorites to watch because of what he could do compared to others. But yeah, man, I think the African teams sort of in the World Cup next year can have a great chance to maybe not get to semi-final, for instance, but they've got a chance to really cause some teams problems there.
I'm going to say something controversial, but you know, if France make it to the final and win it, then Africa won. That's Africa and friends, you know what I mean? Like,
that's true. But you know, even in the '98 World Cup, when they won the World Cup in '98. The French fans, it was almost at that point that the fans had a separation between Africa and French nationals. So like Zidane, who was in there, Marcel Desailly, Thuram, you know, they were always looked at as outsiders. But when they won the World Cup in '98, it really united the country. And the French nationals began to really sort of respect players who were originally from Africa, but represented France in there as well. But you're right, that France would probably Yeah, you're right. Africa would win it because of players they've got in their team, which is
Like
insane, really.
95%, you know.
Yeah, exactly. That's it, man. That's it. But it's great, isn't it? Like Africa gets a little win there. They get a little win, I suppose. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, man. I mean, listen, Premier League back this weekend. This is not Premier League news, though, by the way, but Jack Wilshere is a new Luton manager, or head coach, as they call it now. Yeah, a great player. We spoke about him before, and injuries obviously hampered his career, but how do you think he could do at Luton?
Look, man, he has every chance. You know, he has a very good footballing brain. You know, he's been under some of the best tutelage you can get in the game. So it's a great place to start, you know, at Luton Town. It's kind of crazy how far from grace Luton has fallen since, you know, being in the Premier League. You know, I believe they're in League One now. But look, it's a great place. It's a great place to kick on from. You know, there's a lot of big projects, a lot of financial backing that Luton is getting because they're looking to get a new stadium, moving away from Kenilworth Road. So I think it's a great place for him to, you know, sharpen his tools, you know, and I think that, you know what, there's a great young manager that's lying in wait. You know, it's possible that he could be one for the future as an England manager, you know, which would be fantastic to see. So let's see, can he get them promoted, you know, get them back in the Championship, you know, and then eventually, you know, if the right backing, get them back into the Premier League. You know, it'll be interesting to see the style of football he adopts while in the lower leagues and how it evolves, you know, over time, you know. So yeah, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Jack, again, hampered with injuries, but I feel like him working with the Arsenal youth team as well over the years, he's got that coaching experience now. He's not new to coaching per se, but being the head coach of a club now would be a real test for him. But I think he's got the character to deal with it, to be fair. He's never shied away from challenges throughout his career. Even when he had injuries, he still fought to come back stronger. So I think they've got a good character there, to be honest with you. And as you mentioned, style of football, I think it'll be progressive. I think it'll be attractive at times. Luton is still a small club, to be honest, and them getting in the Premier League a couple of years ago was a massive achievement for them. But I'm sure they'll be looking to sort of come back there. So no, I agree. I think he'll do all right at Luton, to be honest, Jack. I think he's got the experience, and hopefully he gets them back into it. But yeah, Flexx, man, it's been good to chat to you today, as always. And guys, again, 96 subscribers now, so thank you to everyone who subscribed for us since our last podcast. We're trying to get to 100. Only 4 more subs left, guys. We can do it. Only 4 more. And also as well, by the way, we've noticed that the majority of our viewers, who we love and appreciate, are non-subscribers. So again, if you're watching this and you're not subscribed, please subscribe to us. It makes a massive difference. We're here weekly, giving you the best, football content, best football chatter, as they say. So help us get to 100 subscribers. We appreciate your support. Again, like us on TikTok. We're on TikTok. We're on Instagram as well. Twitter also. Keep us updated with our content. And Flexx, I'll see you again next week.
Yes, sir, man. It's been a pleasure.
As always, man. Take care.
Cheers.